You can probably hear the rain. It's a rainy photo walk. Storm Goretti is on the way. I know that because our Keith told me that. He said, batten down the hatches. Storm Goretti. I thought, that doesn't sound very nice at all. It's possibly the most, I don't know, Viking name yet for a storm. But at the moment, just rain. Rain, rain, rain and rain. But photo walks happen in whatever weather, don't they? I'm not sure I'll be making many great sketchbookers today because it's always the busy days. I know I don't like the word busy, but where something happens that you're not quite expecting. Extra milers will hear exactly why I'm recording the photo walk on a Thursday afternoon. You're privy to that. But yeah, Thursday afternoon, rain, rain and rain. Storm Goretti on the way. Batten down the hatches. I blame Keith. To introduce this week's show, I do need to do a bit of a recap of last week's, so bear with. Before Crimbles in late September, early October, I threw out a small request to you that turned out to be anything but small. I asked you to send me one photograph from 2025. Not necessarily a greatest hit picture, not something that had done really well online and got thousands of likes necessarily, but one that you keep finding yourself going back to and thinking, I'm rather proud of that. That one, that really means something to me, for whatever reason, emotional or otherwise. What came back was a veritable flood of pictures. Not just pictures, but little parcels of utter honesty. Over 100 of them, each letter with a picture or picture with a letter carrying a story, various lengths, and sometimes so open and personal that you took me quite by surprise. You stopped me in my tracks, you did. I say this a lot, but it keeps being true. The amount of trust that lands in the inbox that I have, or better still through PhotoWalk's actual physical letterbox, it never feels normal. And this project, this thing that we have, this podcast, is a huge reminder of that. And we're going to be doing the project The One, because we're at part 2 this week. We'll do that again next December, or next late autumn into December. So asking you to send in the photographs that you did that really represented your 2025, it wasn't meant to be a competition. There was no judging panel, no ranking, no scoreboard, nobody holding up 7, which made the whole thing blooming hard to choose from, to be fair. It's one of those moments, and I may do this next year, where, well, I think I may get an informal panel to help me out next year, because it was one of those moments where I thought, I don't know how I can choose pictures for the show, because it was supposed to be one show, but it's become 2. The shows that I invite those to come on to talk about their pictures that they made last year, the big picture, The One. But we've chosen, or I've chosen, and this is part 2 of that story. They were not neat, small 5-minute chats that I had with those that had made these 10 pictures. Far from it. The conversations that we had wandered right off script, they did. They opened up how people see, what they're thinking about when they make their photographs. And there were moments of advice in there as well. Even when I don't suppose they were necessarily thinking of offering any. It felt less like interviews and much more like the sort of conversations where you sit down with somebody and say, I saw something you made, tell me all about it, in a pub. So The One stretched, it became 2 weeks. 5 photographers last week and 5 this week. What you are about to hear is the second half then of these conversations. They're not rushed to keep things all tidy-like, as they say in Wales land. They are stories where you really hear the personal nature of why the pictures were made. And yes, if you want to see the photographs being talked about, of course, they will be on the show page for episode 514, along with the words that came with them originally, so you can read the stories that they sent in as well. You can go and look at everything, of course, on the One, which is a link on the Photo Walk page today. If you sent a picture, if you sent a story, and it's not been part of these 2 episodes, that does not mean it was overlooked or unloved in any way, shape or form. The whole thing, as I say, grew far bigger than expected. The good news is that... Oh, let me put myself under a tree for a second. It started really pelting down. Telling you, I'm blaming Keith. The good news is the One now has this home on the show's website. It's not going anywhere, and I plan to keep coming back to it during the year, pulling out some more images and voices when it feels right. I may yet speak with you. So here is The One, Part 2.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I think I've always had this creative child inside that needs some way to get out occasionally. I used to draw and sketch and doodle when I was in school. In fact, my teachers would tell you I was really good at that and I was terrible at the subject.
To be honest with you, like a lot of pictures, I didn't actually see the person when I was lifting the camera. I just saw it afterwards, so it was a bit of luck, but you do get that, don't you?
Yeah.
Going to Antarctica was more like interplanetary or interworld rather than going to another place.
If I can't photograph my own worst day, how could I be expected at some point in the future to be in a situation where I'm photographing tough situations for other people? Not that I expected to be, but you just never know, right?
I mean, when you're doing this kind of work, of course, I'm thinking a lot about what this might look like as a blurscape, but you never really know until you see the final results.
The studio voices belonging to my guests on the Photo Walk show today. We're back for part 2. 5 guests, 5 photographs and stories from the pictures sent in response to my request a few months ago to send in the picture that says 2025 to you, The One. Before we start though, I'd like to tip my cap to the amazing patrons who support this show, the Extra Milers, and actually today there's a show made from one particular subject discussed, which I'll tell you about in a short while. Thank you also to arthelper.ai, who help you sell your photos online in 2026 by making posts and mock-ups and marketing emails for you. So if this is the year where you thought, I'd like to sell my work or at least have a go at doing it, but you really don't have a clue where to start with the marketing, arthelper.ai, well, they do the tricky bits for you. And you can get 30 days free with code PHOTOWALK when you go to arthelper.ai. So, my guests, in a moment that you'll hear from, John Lancaster's health scare leads to digging his heels in, photographically and mentally. Wendy Brandon finds complete peace surrounded by whales and an iceberg. It sounds idyllic. Jan van der Hooft has the most incredible personal story of life and giving. Michael Tenbrink is making blurscapes. And Gene Westberg finds magic off the beaten trail. 5 pictures, 5 photographers, 5 stories. So, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. If you're in the UK, a rainproof jacket today, check. Walking boots, check. Have you got spare film or an extra SD card? I reckon so. Right then, well, let's walk. I've just stepped in a puddle. Keith, it's getting worse. I'm blaming Keith, I'm telling you. Who is this Keith you keep blaming, Neil? I'll send you his address and you can write to him. Keith, dear Keith, who we spent time with on the Scottish retreat. Oh dear, he's right about the storm. It's getting rainier, it is. The way you write about walking, making pictures and trying to stay vaguely human in a loud and getting louder world is what turns this into much more than, well, I think, much more than just a podcast. You keep me on the straight and narrow in terms of mental health, I think. We often talk about photography and mental health together. I know it sounds like I'm going to get all serious. I don't mean to, but you do. We've talked a lot about my dad, actually, and if you're new round here thinking, what, have we? I'll fill the gaps. I absolutely adored my dad. I know not everybody has that same relationship, so I shall tread carefully. But when he passed, which is decades ago now, far too young, I was working in radio. And the very act of doing something I loved, which was radio, as much as podcasting and photography now are my absolute creative, overused word alert now, passions in life. At a time of such loss, the fact that I was able to do something I loved really, really made a difference. That creative, cathartic thing, it's really, really important. It so is. So thank you for your letters, for your thoughts, and certainly for these most personal pictures and letters that you sent in for the one. If you want to send, and we're coming back to the mailbag next week, your thoughts about life and picture making to the show, then stories@photowalk.show is the address. Can you hear the rain? Trying to find just a bit of cover. I tell you what, my notes are already sopping. They are sopping, they are. Right then, again, today, 5 pictures, 5 stories, 5 photographers talking about the images they sent in for this feature that we call The One. And the stories that sit behind them, how they shoot, what they notice, what life looks like on the other side of the lens. Here's the first of those voices, John Lancaster, a photographer who found his way back to life one step at a time, quite literally, as you're about to hear. After a serious health scare, he picked up his first proper camera and began photographing daffodils from a chair in his garden. I think was the story. A few years later, he was back doing what he loves in the Lake District, walking the Wainwrights, which we've talked about before. Camera on shoulder, rebuilding both his heart and a sense of himself. I know that sounds poetic, but I really believe that. What began as recovery turned into a second photographic life and a growing belief that walking and making pictures weren't necessarily separate things. So this then is the story behind the photograph that you'll see on the show page today that John made for The One, and the road that led to it. Here's John Lancaster. John, this is an absolute stunning picture. It reminds me a little bit of, parts of Lanzarote. Only because you've got this black rock. It feels like a moonscape. I think actually they recorded a bit of was it Moonraker? I think it was James Bond's Moonraker on Lanzarote, because I think they did it at night. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So you could do the same here though. But tell me about the picture where it is. And there's a tiny detail in it as well that I want to know about. Is that a person standing there?
That's a person.
It is.
Yeah.
So it gives you a real sense of scale as well.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, like a lot of pictures, I didn't actually see the person when I was lifting the camera. I just saw him afterwards. So it was a bit of luck, but you do get that, don't you?
Yeah.
It was taken last May, I think.
Right.
And being on a walk with a friend of mine, Tony, and we were just going up Bow Fell, which is one of the higher peaks in the Lake District. And when you're walking on that route, you've got views across at the Scafell Range, Scafell Pike, and Scafell itself. So the two hills you can see in the distance, on the right is Scafell Pike, which is obviously the highest one in the country, and on the left is Scafell, which is number 2. Yeah. And there's a sort of gully between them called Mickledore, which you can see on the photo. The little peak that the guy is stood on is a Burkitt Fell, because you'll know that as well as the Wainwrights, there's a guy who came along and he's listed 500 plus fells in a book called the Burkitts. So he's obviously running around ticking those off. So he's up there on the day. And really, I think the rest of the picture, the light does it. Because what you get in the Lake District, and you've obviously been up there, and you see lots of pictures of it online, you can stand in the same spot 2 hours apart and it'll look completely different because of the light and the shadow and the It's
I rarely see a picture of the Lake District, which, notwithstanding the sky in the background, but could well be a planet from another galaxy. I mean, this looks like a moonscape if ever there were one.
Well, those aspects are quite rocky. Those sides of Scafell Pike and Scafell are quite rocky, so there's not a lot of greenery there anyway. But it was mid-afternoon. It wasn't sunset or sunrise. It was about 3 in the afternoon. It's just it just hit right, really.
Yeah. So. Well, we often talk about layering. I know it drives some landscape photographers mad when they hear the word layering. Not another person talking about layering, but this has got those 3 layers: the foreground, the midground, the background. It's got everything in terms of the makeup of a perfectly layered picture of, you call them hills, I know they're called fells, I call them bloody big mountains, frankly.
They are quite big,
if I was ever going to climb one of those. You should probably, if you don't mind, for the sake of the other listeners as much as anything, explain what the Wainwrights are. I know we've talked about them on the show before, but not everybody knows about them.
No, they don't. Well, there are far better qualified people than me to give you the history of Alfred Wainwright, but he was a guy who, in the 50s, basically catalogued 214 different hills in the Lake District and wrote 7 guidebooks with lots of different routes up and down each one. The guidebooks are still in print, still buy them. People now talk about Wainwright bagging, and it's become a bit of a challenge whereby people tick them all off, which is what I've done, and lots of others do every year. So really the 214 fells are spread out across the Lake District. Some of them are the ones you see when you have a day trip to Windermere and Ambleside. Others are miles away. They're virtually in Cockermouth and Barrow, and they're hell to get to, But so it takes a lot of driving, a lot of determination.
I think I've done 3. You've done 214. You completed it in 2023. And when you wrote this in, I don't know, you might have done another one since. You're 7 short of a second round.
Well, it's a funny one, really, because a good friend of mine, Tony, who I've known for decades, he had a bit of a family tragedy a few years ago. His brother died, and I got in touch with him, and he came on a couple of walks with me. And he was coming once a month or so, and then he eventually got the bug. So he completed my Wainwrights with me, and then decided to carry on himself. Yeah. So whilst I had no intention of ticking off formally a second round, doing his with him, it sort of left me. I think it left me about 15 or 16 short when he completed of me doing the second lot. So I've not completed them again yet, but I probably will do. It seems silly not to, doesn't it? Although there's no pressure, but it's one of those things.
Yeah. It's an incredible feat, I think, to do all the walks. Alfred Wainwright, in his inimitable style, I think he did them in sort of hobnail boots. Wasn't very well dressed. I think he wasn't well dressed in terms of what you think you should wear when you're going out doing these fells, because the weather can be it can be relentless and very unforgiving.
Yeah, it can. I think that these days with Gore-Tex and breathable fabrics and all of that sort of stuff, you can get up there in any weather, and I think the main thing is being steady on your feet. If you slip, you can hurt yourself, but you can do that on the pavement outside your house, cleaning your driveway, can't you? So you've just got to get the right footwear, really, and wrap up for the weather. So it's the usual layering, a Gore-Tex top, a fleece, a base layer. Very rarely never have I worn more than 3 layers in all sorts of weather. It's just a remarkable protection these days, So in the old days, I think he used to go up in a tweed jacket and a hat and a scarf and baggy pants, and he didn't do it in the winter though. That's the thing, because he had to get the bus everywhere, and the buses didn't operate in the winter. So what he did is he hiked in the summer and wrote his books in the winter. So interesting character though. A lot of stories about him. A lot of stories about him being a little bit ignorant and bad-mannered, but other people say he was a great bloke and he was misunderstood. So he predicted within a week how long he would take to complete his books, and it took him 13 years. and he was a week out. So
Wow.
it's quite obsessive.
Well,
yeah.
that is, yeah. Have you, so walking the fells and doing these Wainwrights and ticking them off, was it always something you did with a camera? Was it a photographic pursuit or was it a walking pursuit?
It was my history with the camera. I mean, my first camera, I was only thinking a few weeks ago when I emailed you, my first camera was a Kodak Instamatic that I had when I was a little kid. And if you remember, we had those Magicube flashes. Do you remember those?
My mum used to scream at us. She'd say, don't use up all the flash.
Yeah, Magicube X.
Yes,
and,
I remember them. Yeah,
I've gone through with various cameras, so I've had a few of those. I had the 110 and blah blah blah, and then I used to do a lot of fishing, and part of the fish used to go fishing for big fish, if you like, and part of that was taking a picture of what you caught. So the camera was always something that you had to take a picture of what you were doing, rather than photography itself, you know. And I suppose I got into photography as a thing about 2015 when I bought myself a Nikon or Nikon, for your other listener, maybe. DSLR, when I was working away in Stoke, I bought myself a D3200 and started to try to take pictures rather than just taking pictures of things, you know. Yeah. I started to try photography, so that's where I got involved.
Well, it was 2015 where the life changes for you a little bit, wasn't it? Because it was the day of a solar eclipse. You were feeling a bit shivery. A bit shivery is really only the start of the story, though, wasn't it?
Well, I'd retired from the health service, early retirement, deliberately to do consultancy work because I was quite senior in the NHS and I had the opportunity to do it. So I was working away in Stoke-on-Trent and I'd bought this camera and was taking pictures and basically got the flu. Or a cold-like bug, if you like, and ended up with myocarditis and ended up in coronary care and ended up on death's door for a bit.
The flu caused that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it can do. No such thing as just the flu. Yeah. It's very dangerous. That's why I lecture people every year to get the jab.
That's interesting because people usually say, "Oh, it's the flu. It'll be a bit rotten, but we'll get through it." But it wasn't that for you, was it?
Well, no, it's a serious disease. I mean, it's if you think of the word we don't mention, the C word. It's the same thing. It's a virus, you know. And I got myocarditis just like a lot of the people who got the COVID got myocarditis.
Is that acute heart? Is that acute heart failure?
It's an infection of your heart muscle,
right? Which
prevents your heart from functioning and can cause heart failure. Wow. Which is what I was admitted to hospital with.
So it wasn't that you were unfit necessarily.
I was a 50-year-old guy. I mean, I've never been a gym bunny, you know, but I don't think I was necessarily ridiculously unfit. I was just normal 50-year-old man in a suit, you know. I wasn't expecting that anyway.
So how did you fight your way back to fitness and what happened with your photography and your walking from that point?
Well, it's the only time I've been disappointed in the NHS, and I worked for the NHS for 30 odd years, but I recognised that I was being written off. I got a cardiac nurse came to see me, and I always remember this, and said, "You need to change your lifestyle." And I remember thinking, what does she mean? I don't drink, I don't smoke, And what she was saying was like, you're never going to work again. You're going to spend the rest of your life on a settee and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And I thought, but whilst I could turn it into a conversation about how I was determined to, you know, and it was pure grit that did it. I actually just didn't take any notice of it. I just disregarded it, went home and started walking around slowly. One day I got stuck on the field over the road. I went for a walk and got halfway across it and couldn't walk anymore. So I had to sit down for just 35 minutes and then I walked back. But I just built it up bit by bit. And then I had a cardioversion, which was shocking your heart back into rhythm. I hadn't a cardiac, my heart was in fibrillation. So I had one of those, and once I'd had that, things improved quite a bit. It's just time, really. I think by 2019, I had one more procedure, and it was I've been fine since then, touch wood. So no problems.
And now you're walking these incredible long Wainwrights. Some of them are long, yeah.
Yeah, it's something I did. The first Wainwright I did, although I didn't realise it was a Wainwright, was when I was at school. We used to go up with school holidays went to Coniston regularly. And I'd kind of made a plan, right, I'm going to do them. So I did a couple in 2017. And then it kind of wavered off again because I started getting work and all that sort of stuff getting in the way. And then during the pandemic, made the decision that I was going to go for it. So as soon as lockdown in the July was lifted, if you like, I cracked on with it. So it took me to 3 years, just about. So
now that you do have the camera, now that you're doing it in a photographic sense, does it change the way you experience the walks? Because I know some people say I kind of walk and see differently now I'm with my camera. I'm having a different experience.
I look for the views.
Yes.
I slow down. I probably take a lot longer than I used to do. I mean, what I did do, I always took a picture of the summit, and I think we've shared before. I've got an Instagram page where there's a picture of every Wainwright summit that I took, but it's really just a snapshot, really, because a lot of the time you can't get a background, so it's literally the summit cairn or the whatever's up there. But now I do look for the views. Always got my eyes open. Will always stop and try and get a good shot. I don't take a tripod or anything like that. Cameras these days with the stabilization, they're pretty good, aren't they? You can probably hold them for about a minute and never get a blurred picture. So decent lens, decent camera, and take as many as I like. But I take far more than I post online, but I'll take a few shots of each view, zoomed in, zoomed out, different angle, different composition, different exposure sometimes to see how it works. But I'm quite influenced by Glenn, who I know you've had on the show.
Black Crag. Yeah.
I love his style because what he introduced me to, if you like, is he really goes in for it, doesn't it? He's not got these broad, expansive landscape shots. He's in there and he's following the light, and he'll take a shot of a patch of sunlight on a hill and make it something special. So I mean, I'm not comparing myself with him by any means.
But he stays out on the fells as well at night, doesn't he?
Yeah. I've never done that. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't appeal, but I like my home comforts.
I think you have to have kahunas of steel to do that, because I do remember his story about the haunted experience he had. I think it was one of the paths where it's Roman soldiers used to go over it or something.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm doing it now actually. As he was telling me, it was giving me the shivers.
But if you look at his video of that episode, you actually do see someone, don't you?
Well, I keep watching it, but I watched it loads of times thinking, that's got to be some sort of camera trickery. Yeah. But having spoken to him personally about it, and our good friend Mally of the Trees has talked to him about it as well. Yeah. He's absolutely adamant. He saw it. Oh, yeah. He saw it. Yeah.
No, I think he did. And the Romans have been around the fell. Well, they were around the fells for quite a long time on High Street and around that area of the lakes in the Northern Fells. So who knows?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned High Street, because I hadn't heard of High Street a few years back. And our friend of the show, the late Niels Armerlinks, who's sadly no longer with us, and we'd had this plan to walk haystacks, and he'd said to me High Street as well, High Street and haystacks. High Street was the one that haystacks apparently is quite a tricky one. High Street as well was one that I thought, it's got to be easy. I'm just going to be like a little street with a Costa coffee at the end. But that's not High Street at all, is it?
Not. No, it's not. And
haystacks is the same. It's a walk and a half.
Yeah. There are a few that are easier to do, and they are hills, if you like, grassy hills. But most of the fells, most of the named ones, are quite rocky and quite treacherous if you get them in the wrong weather. And if you get lost up there in the fog, which is common, it can be quite disorientating. So you need to know where you are.
What goes through your mind, John, when you meet somebody out there who's got no idea what you've been through, and they're walking beside you, and you have a little chat with them and talk about your walking and your health and the photography?
I don't bore people with things like that. I mean, I like to chat about the hills, and most people that you talk to are ticking off their Wainwright. So the common denominator is how many have you done and where are you up to and that sort of thing. You see quite a few people up there with a camera, but surprisingly, most people are happy to do it on the phone, which is fine, really. I suppose it's the ideal camera for walking, and these days you get a good shot, don't you? Particularly for landscape, you can get nice colours, nice as long as you can do the composition. So it's just generally chat. I don't go on about health or anything like that. I mean, I always carry a big aspirin tablet in my first aid kit should anyone need it. 300 milligrams aspirin. So, because people, obviously not for me, but people may succumb to chest pain or something.
Yeah.
It happens every year. So I always have a bit of a first aid kit there. And I always have something that indicates what medication I'm on, because I'm on anticoagulants. So if I fall over and get a nasty cut and I'm unconscious, I won't stop bleeding. Well, I will eventually, but so that's always a risk. If mountain rescue need to get me off, they need to know that I'm on blood thinners. But touch wood, I've never had a bad fall. I've just got sore backside now and again. So I do take my time. Yeah. But people on the fells are generally quite chatty. There's a bit of gatekeeping goes on these days, isn't there? Well, you may not see it, but about kids going up with the Nikes on and a bottle of Diet Coke and this sort of stuff with it. But to me, I mean, you've got to learn sometimes, haven't you? And in the summer, the chances are you're just going to get wet and cold. If you go up there like that in the winter, you're taking a risk. But most of these kids going up there in the summer, they're going to get wet, cold and miserable and going to find a way down. Good luck to them. They may go back next year better prepared.
And my thanks to John Lancaster. Interesting advice too, I think, for first aid kits when you're walking in, say, the fells or mountains and other parts of the world. Right, up next, Wendy Brandon. How are you liking these, by the way, the ones? Have you enjoyed them? It's wonderful to hear from members of the community, isn't it, about their own photography. It truly is. As I say, the mailbag returns next week, but I've been in touch with some more photographers. The next tranche, you might say, who sent in their The One pictures, and they will be appearing over the year. Some here, and some on some very special extra mile editions. Anyway, as I say, Wendy Brandon. If I were to give this letter and the picture, which is on the show page, a title, I would call it Antarctica, Wales, and one photograph that made you want to pull your coat tighter. It's a long title, and my sub-editor, Old Man Ron, from my early newspaper days, would have taken a puff on his 10th Woodbine of the day and told me to shorten it to 5 words, boy, and thrown a cup of coffee at me for good measure. So this conversation comes from a letter sent in for The One by Wendy Brandon, who just returned from Antarctica. It was a voyage on an old Polish icebreaker, which I completely forgot to ask her about. Despite having big words on my notes, Polish icebreaker. Anyway, out of everything she saw and photographed down there, the image Wendy chose is not a grand vista or a big show-off iceberg, although there is a berg in it. It's a photograph that makes you want to hunker down as if you were there yourself, with your thick jacket keeping you warm and a big mug of hot chocolate. Oh, I could do with that today, Wendy. Quick, bring on the hot chocolate. Oh, there's nobody along this path with a thermos at this moment. It's the kind of picture that, for me at any rate, comes with a soundscape. I could honestly hear and feel the picture, and that's why I chose to ask Wendy about it on this second episode of The One. Here's Wendy Brandon.
Wendy, as we talk, you are wearing definitely summer clothes. I have a jumper, a shirt and a t-shirt, and trust me, if I could find another layer, I'd have that on as well. The temperature today for you is...
I think probably 30, 31.
Oh, you show off. How wonderful. Actually, though, New Zealand has a similar climate to the UK in places, though, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, very similar. And in fact, the last couple of weeks in New Zealand have been very similar to a UK summer. It's been very cold. We've had several, cold spells, lots of rain, hail in Auckland just the other day, and snow down in the South Island along the west coast. Had some snowfalls around Christmas. So the weather is very unpredictable.
Yeah. Now, you don't call it New Zealand. When you sent me your picture, you called it by its Maori name.
Yes, Two reasons. I mean, we do call it New Zealand. We're very proud of being New Zealand and New Zealanders, but increasingly it is regarded as respectful to use Māori names and place names where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think in an international context, and in a context such as this, I prefer to use Aotearoa.
Yeah, Aotearoa.
That's very good, Neil. Very good, Neil.
Well, I'm doing my best. I
Better quit while you're ahead.
Well, I think so. But although I did notice you put land after just to make me feel comfortable.
Yes.
Well, the picture, let's talk about the picture. What a wonderful photograph. I'm not going to make any apologies for visiting Antarctica twice in 2 weeks. Although David's picture wasn't of that region. It was just that we ended up talking about that region because he was travelling there. And it's your travels that revealed this photograph to us. So this is the one picture. Can you describe it and take us through that particular moment, please?
Yes, as I said in that little note I sent to you, it was hard to pick one photograph because it was such an enormous experience.
Yeah.
But this one, I think, just summed up the feeling of immersion I felt in that place and the realization that going to Antarctica was more like interplanetary or interworld rather than going to another place. And I do like to be alone, and I do like to get up early or to be in the dark. And I was sitting on the deck at about 4:30, 5 o'clock one morning, just before dawn, and it was snowing, and there was a pod of whales passing by, and you could hear them communicating with each other like a chirruping noise. And it was just so magical to feel the snow and hear it and to hear these whales. And it made me, again, because this happened several times, realise that Antarctica is not a place, it's a system. And it's its own world and its own place. And the inhabitants there are perfectly adapted to their environment. They have sophisticated systems of communication. There's a hierarchy in terms of an order. There is a natural order to life there. And we're intruders there. And not only are we intruders, we're destructive. You know, we're destroying that place and destroying worlds. We are losing ourselves.
There's a sort of there's not a sort of, it's a dichotomy here. There's a will to visit because I think it's important to see these places. So if we don't go and see them, we can't bring the stories back and share how beautiful they are. But at the same time, as you say, the irony is that our presence there is not necessarily positive. How do you balance that when you travel to places like this?
Well, I think there is amongst the operators, the tourist operators that go to Antarctica, there is an agreement and a very ethical, very strong ethics underlying their presence there. There is a limit to the number of ships that can go in any particular season. You're not allowed to, you're disinfected on and off the ship. Your presence there is very light. But what it makes you realise, and I think why it's so important to go there, is that you realise the destructive activities that are being carried on there. You know, the plundering of the krill, which is, taking the food. We're taking the food out of Antarctica. There are species there. There are inhabitants there, and we are literally killing them. We're just going in there and taking their food, plundering, melting the ice. And it's that bigger picture that I think, when you think of Antarctica, you think of it being very distant and you think of the big picture. Oh, it's so far away and, it's really beautiful. But when you go there, you realize how fragile and vulnerable it is at the same time as it is seemingly powerful and seemingly unending. So I think it's important for people, if they can, to go there. And less than 1% of the world's population will ever visit Antarctica. So I think it's the purpose for which you go there and what you take from that place. That is the distinction and what matters.
When you took this photograph, it's a berg. I don't know how big this iceberg is. Have you got any Can you give us a scale of it?
It's really funny because scale, when you're in that space, the scale is quite distorted. I would have thought it was not a large berg. It was certainly, it would certainly have been around the same size as our ship. And we saw many that were much larger than us, and lots of smaller ones as well. But yeah, it would have been a decent size.
So how did you choose this one? Because you did actually say in your letter how to choose one photograph from so many. Now, I know you mean by that in context of so many photographs from that time, but equally of the icebergs, because you are navigating. There's a channel that you're I don't if the right word, it's navigating, isn't it? There's a channel you're navigating between them. How do you pick the berg that leaves you with this much reaction?
It was the totality of that experience of the sitting there in the cold and the dark and the whales, listening to the whales. It was just such a magical moment. And often I don't photograph those moments because you're just so in the moment. But I don't know, it was just so special. I just felt the need to record it and to be able to look at it for the rest of my life and remember.
Did you manage to sound record it?
I did sound record it, but and I'm happy to send you a sound recording.
Please,
but I was quite close to the engine, and because there's no other noise and there's no ambient noise in Antarctica, you'd hear the crack of ice from time to time, but generally the silence is amazing. But I was quite close to where I had tucked myself. I was quite close to the engine, and I didn't realise, I was just didn't have proper sound recording equipment, but I was quite close to the engine. So you can hear the chirruping of whales from time to time, but mostly you get the pitter of the snow and the noise of the ship's engine.
So this is quite a slow shutter speed, isn't it? Because you got the snow is falling. I know you're not in a snowstorm, but there's flakes, and they in essence they're like somebody carrying a chalk across a print, aren't they? There's a flick here and a flick there, and that represents the snow. Yes,
and some of them have more snow than either. And this one actually was taken with my phone. Wasn't even using my camera at the stage. I did have my camera with me. I was using my camera, and the photographs I've taken with, I think I went inside at one stage and switched cameras. So I've got photographs from both cameras I was using, but this one just happened to be on my phone. And I think it was just, I don't know, it was just something about it that's, as I say, I think, this will be the moment I will remember for the rest of my life. Yeah. And that photograph, and it's a photograph because it's on my phone. I can only print it quite small, which I think makes it even more precious.
Well, it looks absolutely beautiful. And to imagine the chirruping of the pod of whales and so on is just fantastic. Now, you did something else, actually. So not only were you recording sound and making a photograph, you sat down in your solitude and you wrote a poem, didn't you? I know you've given me permission to read it. We did talk about who might read it, and you said, I'll let you read it. So I'll read it in a moment. I'll drop my voice in, as they say in the business. But tell me about the poem, though.
Well, I am a note taker. I was a lawyer for decades before I retired from the law. So I'm a habitual note taker, and I like to journal. So I do journal, and I was quite keen to record my experiences while I was in Antarctica, so that I wouldn't forget things and I'd remember where I was at particular times, etc. And so when I went for breakfast and was sitting in breakfast afterwards, just making a few notes, that poem was just like a gift. It just came to me. I'm not a poet. I like poetry and I read a lot of poetry. I think that's the only poem I would be happy to put my name to.
Well, it works perfectly, I think. I eavesdropped on whales passing by. I heard them breathing in the dark and watched them. And I heard the crunch of ice against the bow of our ship, an intruder in that place, but grateful. When, or will you return?
To Antarctica?
Yeah.
Oh, love to. Unfortunately, my husband said I can only go if someone else pays or I win lotto.
That seems a bit unfair. Have a word with him.
Well, he very kindly let me spend the bathroom renovation money on going to a touch class.
Well, why don't you spend the living room renovation on the next one? Ask him to sell his car or something. What a wonderful experience. When I look at photographs, I often imagine myself in the place, and particularly with yours, I can feel the temperature in the picture, which is always a sign of a picture that really drives home. It's a very delicate picture as well. And I think that speaks a volume, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love the delicacy about it too. It just feels so ephemeral, and it's just such a moment image. As I say, I've got so many images of icebergs that I've blown up large and I've exhibited and worked like that. But this one's just kind of personal, and it's. I do think sometimes the universe just gives you little gifts. And this is the gift that was given to me.
Perfect. There is another sound, by the way, and you may not even be aware of it. And I've heard it just a little bit in the background as you've been sat there talking to me. There's a song there's a beautiful song that's coming through your window, I think, from a bird.
Oh, yes. That is a tui that lives, or several, but it goes all day singing and looking for its mate. Honestly, by late evening, when we've listened to it for sort of 12 or 14 hours, we become less enamoured with it. But
So I'm loving it, but then I've spent 15 minutes with you. so it might be a different story had I got to tea time with it. It's a lovely sound. It's beautiful. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to. I know there's a rivalry between New Zealanders and Australians for who has the better sounding wildlife. But I know that the bird song of Australia is just so beautiful to wake up to. And it seems to me that it's not too distant in New Zealand as well.
No, we have beautiful bird song. Although, like everything, I think there's much fewer birds around now than I remember when I was growing up. Habitat loss. And I think there's just much fewer birds. I remember flocks of birds when I was younger, and you just don't see that now. And as I say, the birds sound like they're very solitary, and you see maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them. But
well, the other sound in the background is your dog getting tired with us talking.
Oh yes, I might open the door and let him out. Yes, that's Otto, who keeps me company on my morning walk.
He's your photo walk dog.
He's my photo walk dog. He's he's a French bulldog. So we need to walk early in the morning, otherwise the footpaths get too warm for his feet. And his undercarriage is a little bit close, so he gets very hot.
Things you never thought you might hear being discussed on the photo walk, huh? I give you the warm undercarriage of a French bulldog on a New Zealand summer's day. A quick reminder at this point, if I may, for a couple of things. We have a number of photo trips, adventures, and a retreat coming up this year that are open to join. On March the 7th, which I know is quite quick, or quite soon rather, we arrive in Kolkata for this year's India adventure. It's Kolkata and Varanasi this year. I am so much looking forward to it. It won't be weather like today, that's for sure. I know it's not far away. We have a strong crew joining us, but there is a space if you would like to come along. If you're thinking, that's a place I've always wanted to go and photograph and experience, will I ever get a chance to do it? Here is that chance. Then in June, we're in Scotland for the Scottish Week. We're really stepping up our photo experience this year by including a very physical photo printing process that is one of the most beautiful ways to print a picture I think I've ever witnessed. So we're in the Highlands of Scotland, one of the most beautiful places to walk for our Scottish Week. And also in June, we're going camping for for a people photography workshop at a very, very, very English weekend STEAM event. Details should have been on the website before Christmas. And H, who is organising this with me, will be rolling her eyes right now. I know you are, H. I can see you. So that page will be going up soon. Once my hands have thawed out, H. Oh. In September, we're off to Mongolia. Good lordy lord. If you ever needed a photographic experience that takes you so far away, it's positively unworldly, to a place which has been described as having the friendliest people and hosts in the whole widest world, it is Mongolia. We are going hunting with eagles, which is an ancient way of life and ritual. We'll be travelling across vast landscapes that look like they should be devoured by the mountains in the backgrounds. And. It's going to be just the most magnificent adventure. And there's some places open for that. And then in November, late November, it's Venice, 26th to the 30th of November, chosen especially to make pictures of the city by day and night when it's not completely overrun by tourists and when the waters are eerily and beautifully, in photographic terms that is, taking some of the city back. So fish markets, night walks, the amazing churches, very much looking forward to that. So if all these sound interesting, or if any of them sound interesting, I'm sure they all sound interesting, but if any of them particularly pique your curiosity, the links to each trip are there on the website at photowalk.show. And it goes without saying that you and I will be making Photo Walk specials while we're there too. I know already Lynn, my travel buddy, my travel partner in the in our travel business. Sorry, I've just had some rain fall right into my ear. Hold on, tip it out the other way. Honestly, I look like I've just been swimming. What was I saying? Talking about Lynn. Oh yes, that was what I was thinking about. I know Lynn is already waiting to make some pictures of me with a majestic eagle on my arm. I think she thinks I'll be riding off on a horse with a majestic eagle on my arm. If you can ride a horse, you're very welcome to do so. I think I may watch that bit. Right, before I introduce the next picture, can I just say it's a subject that for some people may be difficult in terms of the emotion of what's discussed, although I think we do it in an empathic and, I think positive way. Certainly positive when you hear what the outcome for Jan van der Hooft and his wife Anna is. So, Jan wrote in about a photograph of his young son that he'd made called James. But behind the picture that is on the show page today, and on the one page as well, is such a powerful story, which is about loss, but equally about giving back to other people. That's a big part of this particular story. But I'm going to let Jan tell it because I don't think I need to really say a lot more because he really paints the picture so well of what happened on one particular day in his and his wife's life.
Jan, I'm always, privileged that people such as yourself should send in something that has such a personal story. So first up, thank you for that, sincerely, and thank you to your wife also for allowing us to talk about this picture and this story on the podcast. So thank you for that.
Well, Neil, it's my pleasure. As I said in my intro to my letter to you, I think one of the nice things about a podcast like the one that you are running here is it makes people feel that they can be open and that they can be heard. I have been listening back to some of the first episodes in the last couple of weeks, and even right from the start, I felt that sense of being able to talk without having to censor much. Of course, sometimes, there's confidential things I'm sure people have had to refrain from mentioning specifically, but it really feels, your program really feels like a place where people can be themselves and be human in all facets of what that means.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Very generous indeed. I also want to say, by the way, we've talked about, I don't know whether you've heard the episodes where I have referred to him, but I do talk every now and then about my Uncle Jan. From Amsterdam, who was he would have been a fantastic photographer, because I don't know whether it's a Dutch thing, because he used to joke with us that only the Dutch could do this, and his ability to find things on the ground, his observational skills, usually to find £10 notes, was second to none. But I doubt that's something that's just a Netherlands thing.
I'm not sure. I think you might be onto something. As a kid, I can remember distinctly feeling a sense of looking down more often sometimes than looking up. So maybe it is a Dutch thing. I don't know.
Maybe it is. Yeah. Maybe it is. Maybe it's that way of making sure that you don't step into the canal in Amsterdam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very important thing. I'll right. Well, let's talk about this picture. It's a very potent picture, an incredible story. I've got a couple of questions about it, but I'd like to give you the opportunity, if you will, to relay the story behind it.
Sure. Well, I think the easiest way to do that would be to go back to the beginning, and talk about James's older brother, James being the child in the photograph. And so for that, we have to go back to about this time, 2023. And my wife and I were awaiting the arrival of Willem, our first child. And we had gone past by a couple of days, the due date, and suddenly needed to rush to the hospital with a bit of discomfort on my wife's part. And we weren't quite sure what was going on. It didn't seem terribly serious, but at the same time, the midwifery team recommended that we go. And so we did that. I think it was a Thursday evening. And when we got there, everything seemed normal. The tests that they run with the Doppler heart monitor seemed normal. Anna's physicality, she was fine. And they ran a few other tests, but nothing came back as, particularly alarming. So we spent the first night there on Thursday in the hospital. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to stay overnight because of the COVID restrictions at the time. They were more lax than they had been, of course, but I had to vacate our hospital room there. And so then the next day I came back and we had some more testing done, a more detailed ultrasound. Everything, again, looked fine. My wife's discomfort had disappeared. And so since it seemed like we were, kind of getting things going and we were headed towards the start of labor, that we would do an induction and get that started. So that happened around noon, I think, that day. And then again, everything was fine. All the tests were good until I had to leave in the evening around 9:30. So I went home, went to bed, and then I got a phone call, and I looked this up yesterday while I was putting my notes together, at 1:14 in the morning on January 13th. And my wife was on the phone and she said they can't find his heartbeat. We sort of sat with that news for a minute, and she said that the doctor who had started the induction, was on her way back to see if she could help out. And I made my way to the hospital. And when I got there, the OBGYN had confirmed that we had lost Willem. And I think just because of the situation, labor had started and there was no immediate threat to my wife's life. So we decided to deliver naturally, and Willem was born, I think it was late afternoon, mid to late afternoon on the 13th. And, it was one of those things in life that you never prepare for, or you can't. And we didn't really know what to do. There were people, obviously the medical professionals, the nurses, the doctors who were taking care of my wife. looking after her medical needs. We had support workers come in to offer us resources. And actually, one of those was the volunteer photographer who came in and took some photos for us, which we'll come back to maybe a bit later. But it was an important moment, I think, for us because we were able to capture that moment in time. And we're happy to have it now to look back at, even though it was such a tragic experience. So that next year, I kind of, as I wanted to get back into the world and get back into what you might, I guess, call the land of the living per se, I kind of dove nose first into film photography. I had been mostly shooting digital up until that point. And I found that the film experience gave me time to slow down and the time to find a tactile experience that gave me some respite, but allowed me to sort of go back and forth between being in a social situation and then being outside of it. And a year later, at that point, we were about to mark Willem's first birthday and ended up at a antique shop. It's called the town of Saanich, which is just up island from us here in Victoria. And I had been looking for, I would been looking for a film camera kind of like either the Canon F1 or the Nikon F. And sure enough, we were in that store and there was a Nikon F on the shelf. And it looked pretty beat up. The lens has got some scratching and other things on it.
Character.
But
character
exactly.
is the word I use, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it just seemed like, okay, maybe this is a sign. And in my letter too, I had noted that actually my wife and I at the time had a few days before heard the heartbeat of our second.
Wow.
So it was all kind of happening in the same week there. And so I grabbed the camera and took it home, and I realized it belonged at one point to a photographer at the Vancouver Sun.
So it had real history.
Yeah. And so I thought, okay, this is an interesting camera.
Yeah.
So I started shooting it. I actually think it's one of the cameras I put the most rolls through at this point. And then for the photo specifically, we have to jump forward again, almost exactly 9 months. And our second son, James, arrived. That experience too was you can't write it any stranger, And so, of course, my inclination to photograph and create memories was at an all-time high. And I just, whenever we found a moment, started taking pictures. And, I used that camera, I used some of the other ones, but the photo in particular that really meant a lot to me was taken with that Nikon F in, I want to say, I'm pretty sure it was early February. My wife had gone back to work, and James and I were home, and he was on the bed there. And I didn't plan it, but I obviously, I watch for the light.
Yeah.
And our bedroom window in the morning gets this kind of diffuse light coming through because there's a tree right in front of right on the front of the street. And even in the winter, it's, the sun's quite low as well. So it's quite flattering. And he had only recently sort of been able to roll over and smile and hold his head up. And I thought, you know what, I have to capture this. And it was just, for me, a kind of release, a kind of relief that we had brought a living child home and that we were growing our family. Not that we weren't growing it before, but when you're not able to bring a child home, there's growth that happens. It just happens differently.
It's an extraordinary story. I do want to come back actually to the volunteer photographer, but if I may stay with this photograph of James for a moment. There's, I want to say softness, but I don't mean focal softness. I mean, the soft nature of this photograph is absolutely beautiful. The bedspread or the that's coming forward, or not the spread, the blanket, and then the fall off as it goes back to all that lovely. It looks like a Christmas stocking in the background, hanging on the back of the. My wife actually has knit now 4
stockings. That's one of her pastimes. So that's what's on the door in the background.
So there's significance to it, actually, isn't there?
Yeah, and one of the things that Anna does to unwind and to relax is to knit, and so she's been knitting as well for the hospital. And in fact, she had knit an entire outfit for both Willem and James each to come home in. So yeah, the stocking there in the background is actually significant for several reasons.
With regard the volunteer photographer, if I may ask you some questions about that. We've talked about Remember My Baby, which is a service we have in the UK.
Yeah, I went and actually looked it up the other day.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary service offered by extraordinary photographers. When I remember when we talked about this on the show, I'm sure there's been a reaction. Although it's never been mooted to me, but I'm sure there's a reaction from some that would be, well, why would you want that photograph? Now, I understand why. I completely understand why. I look at it through a photographer's eyes as well. How was that approach made, and how did you decide, yes, we will. We would like to have Willem photographed. Thank you.
I think it was one of the aspects of the support that we were offered that surprised us the most, because we did have that initial reaction of why would you want that? And certainly growing up, the attitudes and language surrounding pregnancy and birth never included discussions about, quite frankly, dead children. Yeah. So it was a bit of a surprise that somebody would be willing to do that, first of all, and second of all, why would we want that? But I think because I had already been attempting to make a bit of a living as a photographer myself, it didn't seem all that strange in the end. And actually, I had just purchased a new, at the time, Canon as R6 Mark II, right, which I brought to the hospital in my go bag. And so I actually have a few photos that I took of myself, because I thought, if I can't photograph my own worst day, how could I be expected at some point in the future to be in a situation where I'm photographing tough situations for other people? Not that I expected to be, but you just never know, right? And I don't think I'll ever find myself doing much, war photography or even photojournalism of a particularly dangerous genre. But I just thought, I think I have to do this myself. And I remember thinking at the time, man, I have no idea what I'm doing. The lighting in the hospital room was...
Well, it's never very flattering.
No. And I remember also thinking, boy, I'm going at this very coldly. And I gave myself permission for that to be what it was. But I was looking at them back even last night, and I thought, no, this is actually not as, at the very least, it's not as cold and detached as I thought it was at the time of taking it. But I am so glad that the volunteer was able to come in and take more for us, because one of them in particular is one that I've had on my lock screen now since we got them. It's very, very special.
It's interesting that you should say, if you couldn't make a photograph of a particularly difficult moment yourself, how could you be expected to take a photograph or make a photograph of a difficult situation for somebody else? And immediately the genre that does spring to mind is often conflict, isn't it? But I'd just like to propose to you, because, and I'm sure it must have gone through your mind, that the service that the volunteer photographer offered is probably one that I imagine, perhaps I shouldn't put words into your mouth, but maybe it's something that you've been thinking about yourself. But that's one thing. I'm also remembering of a particular shoot that I did, which was the funeral for a young baby called Felix, who died shortly after his birth, very shortly after his birth. And his parents decided to make sure that he was remembered by having a funeral and by having a tribute for him. And that was a particularly difficult day. But so there are many different genres. Yes, well, and I do actually now volunteer at the hospital in Victoria here. I'm one of three. I joined the one who took photos for our family,
specifically because she did, I thought, you know what, I have to give back. And so the three of us were not always all available, and these things can happen in the middle of the night, middle of the day, and we're not always able to go, but it's been very, I would say, cathartic and rewarding in a way to be able to provide the possibility for families to find comfort. And I mean that when I say, like, I think a lot of people go into volunteer positions like this, hoping that they can help. And sometimes there's this feeling, well, you've had this service, so it should help. And it doesn't always. So, like I say, being able to offer a possible avenue to families who are grieving to someday find a way to look back at the photos and not feel only heartbreak.
And Anna's volunteering as well.
Yeah, she does. She's not in the photography side of things, although I have lent her my cameras at numerous points, and I'm always very pleasantly surprised what she sees.
Good.
So interestingly enough, she has more inclination to do sort of the Dutch angle shot than I do.
Right. There's irony.
Yeah. But no, she now sits on the board with an organization called the Pacific Perinatal Foundation. And I believe actually at one point before the volunteers were coordinated directly through the hospital and through Island Health, that PPF actually was providing the volunteer photography service themselves. And so they offer a number of things in addition to that, including counseling supports. And more recently, we've been building peer-to-peer resources, which has actually been really great because when you go through something like that, you don't really know how to talk to people about it unless they maybe have gone through something similar. And it's not that you can't, it's just, and admittedly, I think I would be in the same boat if it hadn't and somebody was wanting to talk to me about it. I wouldn't know what to say, I would hope, I think, that I would kind of say, well, I'm here for whatever you need. I'm here to listen. But when you've actually gone through it and having somebody to say, hey, did you feel this? Hey, did you experience that? Hey, how did you deal with the holidays? Right? Actually, one of the families, the very first family I photographed, I did speak to them beforehand to ask them if it was okay to share their story. I won't use any names, but I'm still in touch with them on a fairly regular basis.
Wow.
They said, we've been on our own journey and we've had our own struggles, but having met you and having had someone like you come to show us that there is a way forward has been really, really helpful in allowing us to find our own. So yeah, I think the volunteering both for Anna and I is very, very much rewarding, cathartic, etc.
I think this photograph proves that there's layers of stories behind a photograph that exist that are so important to talk about. I think if you were just meandering through this page, the one, and you just scrolling on, you might come to it and think, oh, that's a nice picture of a baby in black and white. Oh, looks like it was shot on film. Beautiful. And then scroll on. But to actually know the narrative behind it, the reason behind it, how important it is to you and Anna is just incredibly potent. So thank you so much.
Of course.
For
my pleasure.
For sharing that. It's a fantastic photograph. Oh, just one thing.
Sure.
You've got a beautiful Canon digital photo camera, and you've got this Nikon F. I have the F5. I think it's a brick of a camera. It's a huge thing.
I'm not always sure that I like the styling of the thicker with the sort of attached photo drive and everything.
But I
didn't come into it when that was the thing.
No.
Right.
I photographed with it just a teeny bit at the start of my career, but really, even 20 years ago, we were very much on the digital cusp, really. So I didn't use film much at all. But the what struck me and what's on this photograph is you haven't necessarily touched out the some of the imperfections of film. You know, where you get a little bit of dust on the neg, and I like that.
Yeah, I think going back to my comment a moment ago about Dutch angles, lately I've been thinking I probably fall into more of a documentary style of shooting. Yeah. So in my photography, I look for honesty as much as possible. Now, that's not to say I don't retouch and I don't, look to make my work appear in certain situations as cleanly and practiced as possible. But one of the things about film is its tactile appearance. And if left kind of unfettered, even with really good, expensive glass, you can sort of feel it visually. And so when this photo came out, I do my own development. Although it's not usually very calculated. I sort of follow a loose process. And when this roll of film came out of the tank, I was quite happy because I was a little worried that my developer had been exhausted. I had been scanning using a secondhand scanner, and I know it's got its quirks. The glass on the top is clean, but I think inside there's some dusts and things too. So when I saw the photo and I thought, okay, I want to submit this, I think I have to leave it in. I have to leave the dust. I have to leave the little imperfections because that's honest. Yeah. And life is not perfect, and my journey as a father has not been perfect, and I don't expect it to ever be perfect, but we sort of keep trying and we keep attempting to be better and enjoy all of life's surprises and challenges and the dust and debris that comes along with it.
And my thanks to Jan van der Hooft and, of course, his wife Anna for, both of them allowing us to share this story on the podcast. And actually, Jan is returning with another very special friend of the show, actually, Nikki Heppenstall, to the Extra Mile. And I think I'm going to let my studio self tell you a bit more about this one, because it's a very special episode this week.
Yes, in episode 171 of our Patreon show, The Extra Mile, Jan van der Hooft and Nikki Heppenstall join me for a conversation about remembrance photography for babies. A form of photography most people will never expect to encounter, but which means everything to the families who do. This is the work that happens when a baby dies, and a family is left trying to make sense of a world that suddenly feels obviously very different. In those moments, a photograph becomes a way of saying, this child was here, this child was loved. Jan and Nikki both talk with care and honesty about what it means to step into that privileged position as photographers, and about the practical ways those pictures can help families hold on to something when everything else feels like it's slipping. But it's also an episode about giving back, which is something as photographers in many genres we have a particular power, or if you will, gift, to be able to offer.
So these are permanent, tangible memento, reminder of a situation where they came away from hospital with empty arms. And sometimes you can feel like did I dream that? Did I really have that baby? It's a bit like, for me, it was a bit like having an out-of-body experience, really. It was a bit like I was expecting for someone else.
The question becomes, how do you become visible? How do you draw attention? How do you find new volunteers? I mean, as I said earlier, I felt it was imperative that I find a way to give back.
So that's the Extra Mile for this week. A very special, they're all special episodes, but this one I think is going to be particularly emotive. It's all about how we can serve as photographers. And for many photographers, I know not everybody wishes to do that through what is essentially just the most amazing hobby, but for some it's a real way to give back to give back a little from what you love doing, making pictures. Right, next one, the one picture. This is from Michael Tenbrink, and I have chosen it because I love the idea of experimentation. If photography is nothing else, it's experimentation. That idea that you can say, I had no idea that was going to work, but I love it. And that's what's happened in this particular story. Here's Michael Tenbrink.
Michael, I like this for the abstract nature of it. I do like abstract. And it's a picture I'm familiar with, which doesn't mean that there's any less chance of it appearing as the one. I specifically chose you to talk about this because I thought it might inspire those listening to have a go at a similar way of working with their camera. So I know you made it when you were visiting us for the photo walk retreat. That's where I'll stop and let you take over.
So actually, I didn't make it in Scotland.
Oh!
No, but it's very much related to Scotland. So while I was on the train from Edinburgh to Inverness for the photo walk retreat, I just got the idea randomly to take photos using a longer exposure out the window. And I really was pleased with the work. And so I ended up spending most of the photo walk retreat doing the same thing, using longer exposures and as well as intentional camera movement. And I really don't know where the idea came from, but I've been messing around with it ever since. And so this particular photo I took this fall in a little town north of Milan where I live called Monza. There's a very, very large walled park there, one of the largest in Europe. And I mean, it's a huge park. There's a palace, there's a forest, a horse farm, there's a Formula One racetrack within the park. And there's also a river. And that is where I took this photograph.
So this is not, it's one of your, well, you've called them blurscapes. This is why I used to get C-, see me later in school, because there's a sentence in there. Here's my favorite shot at a park outside of Milan. Yeah, I read everything but that sentence. Part of me thinks, should you edit that out? Another part thinks, no, it's authentic. Leave it in. But the blurscapes, as you call them, how do you make them then? Well, what's the rough technical story behind them?
Well, it's funny you mentioned technical because honestly, I think one of the reasons I've enjoyed these so much is because I came to photography late. I'm approaching my mid-50s. I didn't really start thinking about photography in any serious way until the last 5 years. And I feel like I technically have enormous limitations with my knowledge. But with something like this, I feel like technical expertise doesn't matter so much. So I do these in a very simple way, actually. I use my iPhone. I have an iPhone 14 Pro, and I use the live setting. And again, using either I'm in movement like on a train or in a car, or I'm doing intentional camera movement while I'm walking or even running. And after the photo's taken, I just I use Apple Photos for this, and you just change the live setting on the photo to long exposure, and it results in this.
Because otherwise, the phone would be doing the work for you and thinking, you don't want long exposure. You want this to be everything sharp. Get it now, yeah. And in terms of the colours, so the blurscapes that I've seen of yours, they're quite earthy in colour tones.
Yes, I almost exclusively shoot outdoors, generally while I'm on a walk or a hike. So the colorscape here, this was at the river in Monza Park, and you can see there was a man-made waterfall, maybe 6 feet or so, not a huge waterfall, but I thought it would make an interesting blurscape. And so you're seeing tones of the river bank where I'm standing, and then tones of the river, the waterfall, and then the trees on the other side.
Right.
As well as the sky, of course.
That's what forms that white
yeah.
stripe pacing its way across the picture, which you don't know what it is until you're told. Have you thought about exhibiting these next to each other?
I have. In fact, I've gone kind of hog wild with these. I've taken, since the retreat in early September, I've taken 1,500 of these, which is always my downfall as a photographer. I just go crazy and I shoot so much, and then it takes so much time to go through them and get rid of the duds. And there are a lot of duds, of course. I mean, when you're doing this kind of work, of course, I'm thinking a lot about what this might look like as a blurscape, but you never really know until you see the final results.
Yeah. Do you write? I know you're a writer because you have a Substack profile, and I'll link to that. Do you write with them? Is there a written piece that goes with these blurscapes? Your thoughts, perhaps?
I haven't really done that yet, but that is definitely something I'm thinking about a lot. And part of the reason for that is a lot of my Substack writing to date has been very sort of issue oriented. Like in the last year, I wrote a lot, for example, about World War II and its relevance to today. What appeals to me about writing using blurscapes as the imagery is that they are abstract, and so they would be much less specific, and I could write in ways that are not issue oriented or necessarily thematic or topical, but they could be more, I guess you'd say, creative writing.
I like this. I want to revisit this idea of coming to photography in your 50s and feeling like you're at the start of this creative journey in many respects. Take me through that. Why you came to photography? Why it's become important?
Well, hindsight, which is 2020, as they say. I started taking pictures as a young teenager, but I never thought of myself as a creative person. And what I started taking pictures of was concerts, because I was really a big music fan, and I would go to concerts and just bring my little point and shoot camera. But I continued taking photos in my 20s and 30s and 40s. And it really did become, especially when I was out hiking. But in 2020, during COVID, I did a weekend workshop via Zoom about photography. And I think during that workshop is when I just thought, actually, I am a photographer. and then that sort of one thing led to another. And eventually my husband and I had already decided we were going to move from California to Europe, to Italy. And then I thought, I wonder if I could pursue a degree in photography. And so that's how I ended up I did a year-long program in photography. The first year we were living in Milan.
I think these are extraordinary pictures. And I love the idea that they are accessible to others to have a go at as well. I think so often in photography there is a kind of a dark arts in some of it, and then you come along and find something quite by accident that's working really well.
Yeah, again with hindsight, I think that subliminally or subconsciously, I probably was inspired by a guy who I follow on Substack. His name is Mark Cornick. Oh. And he has a Substack called Ethereal. And I'm pretty sure he's based in the UK, and he mostly shoots seaside. And I'm sure that subliminally it influenced me with this idea, because I've been following him for maybe a year, and I really like his work. I think his work is beautiful. There's another guy also based in the UK named Finn Hobson, who also is on Substack, and his Substack is called Now Hear This. Right. And his work is somewhat related to this as well, so I'm sure that also influenced me a bit. He's based in Brighton, and he actually shoots while he's swimming in the sea.
I know his work. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now you say that, I do.
So I don't think it's a direct comparison to these blurscapes, but I do feel like his work has influenced me.
Well, I expect to see more of these then taken from swimming the depths of Lake Como from now on.
And my thanks to Michael, who will soon be donning his Speedos for some Lake Como blurscapes. I tell you what, I could be donning my Speedos. I'm sopping. Wet through. Neil, you've said it already, I know, but I really am. Whew. And it's getting dark. Usually these photo walks are made first thing in the morning. This one's being made late in the afternoon. And sunset, well, it's setting quickly. I won't be able to see my notes soon. All will be explained on the extra mile at the start, by the way, why this particular episode is being recorded so late this week. It's nice to be out in the rain, though, sometimes. There's something about the rain. I've made a couple of photos here and there, but I put my X100 away to keep it broadly dry, as it's not completely weatherproof. Last picture then. I'm a bit of a sucker for geometry and shapes and leading lines, converging lines, diverging lines. Yeah, Neil, we get the idea. It's a striking black and white picture made by Gene Westberg, who's had a few letters on the show of late, actually. It was made in a small town in Kansas at a crossroads. I think it's an absolute mini workshop in itself about spotting geometry and shadow and shape where you might least expect it. I think it's a reminder that you don't need big cities or dramatic locations to make something really quite special. Sometimes all it takes is being alert to what's already there. Here is Gene Westberg.
Gene, before we talk about your picture, your beautiful picture, we do have to point out that, or you just told me, that it's your wedding anniversary today.
Yes.
Actually, Gene said, it's my anniversary today. And I said, which one? What, wedding anniversary or lotto? What did you say? Come on, be smooth again.
I said my wife would think that I had won both.
Well, there we go. 53, which when you said 53 years, I said that's the number on the Herbie car, isn't it? So, but I doubt you have to buy somebody a Volkswagen Beetle for the 53rd. Do you know what 53 represents? Is there like, I don't know, a precious metal or something that you're supposed to buy? Because you know, as you look every single year, you think, well, what is it this year? Is it tin? Is it brass? What is it?
I would gypsum board. I don't know.
If you bought a gypsum board, you are in trouble.
Fortunately, we decided a lot of years ago that having each other was enough, getting gifts, and it was kind of like Christmas. You get to a point where you've got what you need, you've got what you want. If there's something comes up, you're in a financial position where you can probably go out and get it. So why run around and ruin Christmas?
Well, I'm trying to work out whether you're sounding mean or whether you're truly romantic. One of the two. How
about lazy?
or lazy. Oh, I'm sure you're not that, Gene. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We had some letters, of course, didn't we, at the tail end of last year from you. And you were the letter, or the writer of the letter, who couldn't quite believe that the whole thing was happening for real out on the path, weren't you?
That was me, yes.
Yeah, but now hopefully you've realised it is. It's not done in a broom cupboard. It's for real. These bits obviously are in the studio, but the other bits are out on the path, Gene. Are you a believer now?
I am. Yes, I am. Hallelujah.
So come on then, tell me about your photography. Before we talk about your picture, how long have you been photographing? What sort of things are you interested in?
I picked up my dad's camera after he died, and I was 16, and it was an Argus C3.
A what?
Argus C3.
I don't know that.
Oh, come on, Neil. That's a classic, man.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, look it up.
I will do. Yeah.
Okay. And I didn't know f-stop from aperture or from shutter speed from bananas, right? I was just taking pictures because my dad was the photographer in the family.
Was he good?
And
was he a good photographer?
No, he was a family photographer. He would take pictures at Christmas, and we'd go to a parade or something, and he would just snap away at things. There was nothing there that I thought was creative.
Right.
I had to sit through the slideshows, so it was like boring. And so I put the camera down for a couple of years because I was not getting anywhere. And then I was in the military in Germany, and I bought a camera. It's an old Canon TX, brand new, 1975.
Nice.
And still didn't know much about photography, but I was getting a little better. And then life got in the way. One thing got in front of the other. And when I went to college, I was already in my 30s, I took a photography class. And we had a brand new dark room that 4 of us got to share.
Right.
And of course, it was all filmed. So we'd get an assignment, we'd go out and shoot the assignment, and we'd come back and develop and print. And then the professor would come in and he'd look at it and say, okay, that sucks, or that's pretty good, or here, try this. And he'd give us another assignment. And we did that all summer. So then I started getting a little more serious. And when we built a house, I had it plumbed in the basement. I was going to build a dark room.
Oh, lovely.
Well, hello, digital.
Oh.
Digital came in. I bought a Canon 10D, and I thought I was on top of the world. And from then on, I've just practiced and had fun. And I thought I wanted to do portraits, and that was okay for a while. But I did one wedding. I've looked at your stuff. I will never do another wedding. Thank you very much. But to answer your other part of the question is, when I emailed you about the difference between travel and street,
Yes.
I was going through my archives. I've finally gotten around to sit down and finish keywording and sorting. And I noticed that I do a lot of travel photography. And in that genre, I think I do a lot of street photography. And one of the things that attracts me to street is the shadows, the angles, the lines. And I don't include people as much as I should. And I'm starting to do that more.
That's interesting, actually, Gene, when you say you don't include them as much as you should, because there is this debate, isn't there? Is it street photography if there's not a person in it? I personally think it is. Valerie would probably take issue with me for saying that. Sorry, Valerie. But I think it can be street photography, but the purists, if you will, would say, no, it needs a person to make that a street story.
Well, I've recently started getting books by Fred Herzog and Saul Leiter and love their work. And a lot of their photographs don't necessarily have identifiable people. They may have bits and pieces or parts or inferences, and I don't think anybody would not call them street photographers.
No.
So, just like I said, looking through my archives, I've decided I don't have enough people in there. As I'm going through my pictures, the ones that are appealing to me more that will make the cut for my use are the ones with people, are the ones with motion.
Yeah.
Car tail lights, flashing lights, that kind of stuff. So I think I'm kind of changing, or I'm starting to realize maybe that's a genre I never recognized as being something that I could do until I started looking at it and saying, well, I've been doing this.
So that's what floats your boat.
Right now it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried landscape photography, and I'm terrible at it. And at one time, we lived right next to the Smoky Mountains National Park.
Beautiful. Wow.
And we would go up there and hike on the weekends. And, I'd always take my camera, of course. But you can only take so many pictures of small flowers and moving water and waterfalls. And before it all becomes rote, right? It's just, what's the point?
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not creative enough in the landscape sphere to do it justice. So I need to do something else.
And actually, your picture, the one that you sent in, well, there's no people in that, but I don't know. Is this an architectural picture? Is it it's a kind of urban landscape picture? Urban landscape is a genre these days, Gene. I don't know whether you've heard of that.
It is.
Yeah.
But this was out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas.
Well, and that's what intrigues me. So tell me about this place. First up, I love pictures, and this is why it grabbed my attention when you sent it in anyway, of steps going up. You know those often on the side of hotels. You see the emergency steps, and then you see them perfectly lined up by a photographer, and there's that's fantastic. I love the geometry of that. So when yours came in immediately, it floated my boat in that department, if I can use that expression again. But tell me about this place. And the photograph and the making of it.
While you were on your road trip with Marissa, my wife and I were on a road trip from our home in Utah. We got as far east as Roanoke, Virginia. And on the way back, we were going through, like I said, the flyover states, Kansas, eastern Colorado. And
I always think it's very cruel, by the way, that they're called flyover states.
Yeah, but it's a reasonable description. If you don't have a reason to be there, you're not there, right?
Okay.
So anyway, we'd spent the night in Dodge City, and we were headed to someplace in Colorado for the next night. And we're driving on a secondary road. It was, I think it was US 160, which is in the southern portion of the state. And we're driving along. We come to this little town. And, it's one of those towns where, all right, do we need anything? Do we need gas? Do we need a soft drink? No. So we just kept on driving. And I happened to just glance over, and there was this grain silo complex. So there's other outbuildings around it, for offices and other machinery and that kind of stuff. I told my wife, I said, we're going back, So we went back. She got her book out. She sits and reads while I go out and hunt photographs. And I spent probably, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes total walking around across the street from this thing. There was an old 1960 Ford truck that's rusted and that kind of stuff that intrigues me as well.
Yeah.
And so when I saw this, my first impression was the shadows. And the pipes on the backside being in silhouette kind of gives, I guess it kind of gives balance, but also kind of unbalances it because you got something in that space to the right. And as I was looking at it when I processed it, it almost looks like those steps are floating because the sky is not that different a shade of gray as the silo.
Yeah.
And so it was just the combination of the sweeping shadows and the stairs. I like stairs. And then just the angles. It attracted me. So like I told you, like I said in my description, that little voice in the back of your head, your photographer voice that says, ooh, that might be interesting. Yeah. You need to go back and look at that.
Yeah, and you did.
And I did.
The population is 241 of this place that
according to Wikipedia.
Yeah,
yes.
Tiny. Surrounded by grain fields.
Yeah, there's nothing much out there.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful capture. I love it. It's shadows, geometry. It lives in black and white really well. Is that how you prefer to present pictures?
Photos like that, yes. I've got several of the same kind of compositions, grain silos, farm buildings from different parts of the country. And normally for me, unless there's some compelling reason, like if you have a field of flax or sunflowers or something where you really need that pop of color, I prefer black and white in those because then I want to kind of accent the geometric shapes, the angles, and the shadows.
Well, it does that beautifully. It will be on the show page. Do go and look at it. It's a fantastic photograph. Love it. Now, we haven't had a why this week on this particular episode. We had one last week, so I'm afraid, well, you're the last of the guests on the official 2 episodes of The One. So,
lucky
lucky you. I'm going to pass the baton over to you and ask you, because you've heard this question being answered by lots of people. What's your why, Gene?
My why for photography?
Yeah.
I think I've always had this creative child inside that needs some way to get out occasionally. I used to draw and sketch and doodle when I was in school. In fact, my teachers would tell you I was really good at that and I was terrible at the subject. But, as you get older and life goes on, those kind of things take a back seat and you put them down. Photography for me is kind of a way to draw and doodle and get that creative child back in action, wake him up a little bit. I took about probably close to 2 years off from photography. During COVID, we had our grandsons with us, and so we spent more time, taking care of them, and I didn't make time to do a lot of photography. And I sat down about, maybe a year ago and said, I've got all these photos in my Lightroom archive. What am I going to do with them? And that got me back to, I was starting to keyword, I was starting to sort, and then of course I was looking at these and thinking, all right, let's get my camera out. So I started, getting my equipment back out and getting out and walking and taking pictures. And my oldest grandson has shown an interest in photography, so I encourage that as much as I can. So anytime he's around, I grab him and try to get him to go out and shoot with me. And that makes me go out and shoot. So, it's just a matter of trying to stay active, trying to stay creative, scratch that itch, if you will. I guess that's my why.
My sincere thanks to Gene and all those featured on the show this week. To Michael, to John, to Wendy, also to Jan, who, as I said earlier, is back for the Extra Mile edition today, a very special version. And that's it for this particular edition. 2 weeks, a stack of photographs and photographers being far more open than you might expect, which is testament to how special I think this community really is. If you sent something in, whether we talked about it here or not, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Every picture, every note, every bit of trust really helped turn this into what it became and will become, because we'll be doing this more. The One has a home on the website. I do suggest you go and visit. For now, though, let's let the pictures settle, let the stories breathe a bit, and as they say in Radioville, fade this one out the only way that possibly feels right, and that is with one of our play-out songs, just so you can walk the path and think a little bit more about what's been said today. I'll do my thank yous as I'm going to start doing now at this point of the show, and then play the play-out song. Thank you, Neil Ford, in charge of stuff What Words in the Night, IT, to you and me. Andrea Gilpin, who's on the Instagram floor. Kelly Mitchell, who looks after Facebook. Next door, probably, to the Instagram room. To Kelvin Brown, who's at the helm of the Flickr group. And to Michael Brennan, who compiles the music of the show onto a Spotify playlist so you can enjoy it if you want to take a photo walk and listen back to the songs, the tunes that we play on the show. Right, a postscript for the show, and then I'll play the play-out song for today. That song's going to be Blue by Kristen Ball, which starts out really questioning the world, even with all that it offers. The amazing colours of spring, she mentions, the sunshine cutting through, new mornings and so on, and then realising it's you and how you see the world that makes this a really special place toward the end of the song. It's a great narrative. What about the PS though? Yes, a PS first. Where to go with all the stories that you've heard today? Really, a simple PS, I think, that says so much, from Albert Einstein. Blink and you'll miss, I think. It's this: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Never a truer word or words spoken, Albert.
Head in the clouds, heart full of childlike wonder. The chaos, the crowds, city that never slumbers. Just a regular girl from a regular town. I told myself that I'd never come down. Eyes open wide, finally start to see colors of fall reflected by big yellow taxis in the silvery moon. Kaleidoscope lights, even the streets look happy. So why do I always feel blue? My hands, heart full of answered questions. I know they're true, but I'm still struggling with them. All those little white lies I tell myself, trying to keep up with everybody else. Through weary eyes, so hard to see. Colors of spring grow through the cracks in the concrete, where the sunlight cuts through kaleidoscope dreams. The skyline is whispering good morning. So why do I always feel blue? Discover every shade of colors of me, glowing in wide open spaces, to paint something new. Kaleidoscope piece, up to me to illustrate it. I'll find myself out of the blue.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.